So in this video we're going to learn the fundamentals involved in drawing this image in SolidWorks. We won't go as far as actually putting in the grass and the lights, but we should be able to make the actual artifact itself. So if we start off a new part, what we're going to do is start off a new sketch, and we'll start it off on the front plane. Rather than drawing, we're actually going to bring in a sketch picture. So go to Tools, Sketch Picture. And I've already downloaded this pumpkin image from the internet. I'm going to resize it using these drag handles. This blue line that you can see here is actually a feature that appeared in SolidWorks 2014. It's a more precise way of resizing it, but it's not critical today. I want to position the image so that the origin sits nice and neatly on the center at the bottom of the pumpkin. When you're happy with that, press OK. So I'm closing out of that sketch altogether. So sketch 1 over here contains just the sketch picture. I'll now open up another sketch on the same plane, the front plane, and I will draw a line from the origin up to the top and just stop short of the top and make sure that line is vertical. Now I'll go straight to a spline, and I will start at the top and try to pick up the edge of the pumpkin as best I can. There we go, and I'm pretty happy with that. I might just pull that line up a little bit there, and it's good. So close that sketch. And I'm now finished with the sketch picture for a moment, so I'll click sketch 1 and hide it. I now want to put in a couple of planes. I'm going to go to Features, Reference Geometry, Plane, hit this line as the axis, and hit the front plane as the reference. So if I activate the angle over here, you can see that as I move the plane around, it will give me the angle that plane makes with the front plane. So if I bring it all the way over, it'll be 180 degrees. I don't want it to be 180 degrees, I want it to be 15 degrees away from that. So if 180 degrees is horizontal, then obviously 15 degrees away from that is going to be 165. And we'll approve that. So I want to project this curve onto this plane. So how I'll do that is, I will start a sketch. I may have to pick a random command such as line and start this plane. I'm now drawing on this newly created plane, but instead of drawing on it, I will hit Convert Entities, click the sketch I just drew, and then green tick to approve. So it's now projected at 90 degrees to my new plane onto the new plane. So I'm going to now bring another plane in and do the same thing the far side. So Features, Reference Geometry, Plane. This time for convenience, I'll select the axis and my newly created plane, and I'll put an angle of 30 degrees between those, because 15 and 15 is 30, so there we go. Now I can hide this plane 1, I'm finished with it, and I want to do the same thing on plane 2. I want to project the curve onto it, so I will go to Sketch, just say pick a line, and start a sketch on this plane 2, and select Convert Entities, select this middle curve, and it projects the curve onto it. And finally hide that plane after I close the sketch. So there we have it. We've got 3 curves. So hopefully if I go to Features and Lofted Boss Base, I should be able to pull a loft feature between all 3 of those. Now it didn't work, and I know how to fix it. It's just a little error on my part. If I go back to sketch 3, I didn't actually close the sketch. I need to add a line from the top to there. I should also have projected that line. And also sketch 4, same thing. I forgot to close the sketch from top to bottom. So now if I go to Lofted Boss Base, it should actually work this time, and it does. So it pulls a nice loft between all 3 profiles. Why didn't I just revolve it? Well, it's not a revolve. As you can see in the actual pumpkin itself, it's not a perfectly spherical, or it's got these segments all the way around. That is one of the segments. So I'm now going to call up a circular pattern, use this edge there as the axis. Sorry, I got to click up here on the axis first. And for the features to pattern, I'm going to select this. And I don't want to set the angle. You can see the angle here is set to 15 degrees. I want equal spacing, and I want 12 of them, because each segment is 30 degrees. And if I press OK, after a moment thinking, there is the outline of the pumpkin. Now, I tried shelling this previously and it crashed my computer. It's quite a complex thing to try and shell this, but in reality you wouldn't shell it anyway. It would just be scooped out, I suppose. So what we're going to do is turn on the section view so I can see into the center of it, and I'm going to start a sketch on this front plane, and I'm going to draw what I want the curvature to look like. So I'm going to start a spline or an arc, but I'm just going to choose to do a spline for convenience. And whenever you're happy with it, you do a revolved cut. So I'll drag that up a little, and I can drag some of those points closer to the edge. There's no real right or wrong with that. So once I have that and I'm happy with it, I will go to Features, Revolved Cut. I'll select this as the axis and press OK. And that should have made a nice void within it. Okay. So now to cut out the face, I suppose, I want to start a sketch on the front plane, and I will also section it for the moment. And the sketch is going to be made up of splines, but I want to bring in a sketch picture again. So Tools, Sketch Tools, Sketch Picture. And I've also brought in this pumpkin face image. So if you can take time and line that up, that's a large image, so I'll just make that smaller and line it up whatever way you want it to look right. In this case it's a little hard to see, so I'm going to go over here and go User Defined under Transparency, and I'm going to make that image pretty transparent, or I should say full image actually, transparent. And now, yes, not too bad. So now I can actually position it a little more easily. So when you're happy with that, I'm just going to draw over it, so I'll do it very quickly just to get going. And I'll just get rid of that little constraint. And I'll draw it over here. You could mirror these if you wanted them perfectly symmetrical, but it may look better if they're not exactly symmetrical. And I'll do this. And finally, rather than wasting time with the spline, I'm going to do all of these with straight lines. But of course you could do it with the spline tool, but I'm trying to speed it up here. That'll be fine. So when you're happy with that, bear in mind that sketch is drawn on the center, so I'll just turn back on the section and I will go to Features, Extruded Cut, and I will select that sketch. And I'll make sure that it is flipped and make sure it just extrudes out beyond the surface. There are other ways of doing that, but that's the most convenient way. There you have it. So once you've that done, you can apply some fillets all around the place. I'm not going to waste time doing those now, but just constant radius fillets. You can add a fillet to all the edges there. In a previous version of this, I also added fillets to the corners, the edges between the segments, but that's not a priority now. What I want to do, just to finish this off, is to put the little stem on up there. So to put the stem on, I'm going to go Features, Reference Geometry Plane. I will select the top plane as the reference, and I'm going to add the plane until it just goes below the surface. And sure enough, there it is. And just to double check that, what I'll actually do is I'll section it, and I can see that the plane is definitely within the material there. So what I want to do is draw on that. I'm going to sketch using a spline on this top plane, and the profile I want is going to look something like this. Just try that again now. Try that again. It's going to look something like this. And again, this is a very organic shape. It's the stalk as it grows, so I suppose the more random the better. So once you have a profile there, and that profile is drawn within the solid itself, I need another plane. So Features, Reference Geometry Plane, use this plane as a reference and just bring that down until it looks proportionally okay. There is pretty good. So I'll hide this bottom plane, and now I want to start a sketch of a spline on this plane. And what I'm going to do is try and mimic the same shape, just a little smaller and over to one side. And just to tidy it up, I'm going to hide this plane. And finally, I'm going to loft between both of those. So features, a lofted boss base. If I select this profile and that profile, I get the loft, but it doesn't look that realistic. If I go to start end constraints and set both of those to normal to profile, it should give me that little kick that looks more realistic. I should also have selected in that loft feature, or rather deselected merge result. That will make it a separate body, so I can apply easily separate materials to that. So what I can also do is turn off the section view now, and you could go to a fillet or a dome feature. Let's try a dome feature. Insert features, dome, select the top surface, and we'll deselect continuous dome, and of course it does it pretty good for us. Adds on a nice stalk to the top of it. So finally, just in terms of adding some renders to this, I added actually a wood, organic wood, and I just picked a random thing like beach and put beach onto that body and look like a stalk. Now to get the render looking like pumpkin, I experimented with some, but the one that worked best for me was actually rubber. So I went into rubber, matte rubber. It was textured rubber actually, and I dragged and dropped that onto the entire body. Then I clicked it, pressed the drop down arrow under appearances and edited it here, and over here I can then click and choose the correct orange I want. So it took a little bit of time to actually work my way through it until I actually got the orange that looked just right. That wasn't bad, but then when I rendered it, it looked okay. So I won't cover it in this video, but to get this image, what I did was I drew a large sheet on the ground and sat the pumpkin on it and textured that with grass. I turned off all the lights in SolidWorks, and with the exception of a single light within the pumpkin and a large spotlight a large distance away shining onto the ground, creating this shadow.